and it's a beach scene, and the guy's on the slowly raises up, he opens his eye, face unlock, says who's calling, he slowly lowers the chair and closes his eye. All right, now we're getting audio to YouTube. Sorry, YouTubers. There's always one thing I forget to do. Now there's audio to YouTube, so we'll have to fix that. Alrighty, so that was the iPhone 11. Now we have the iPhone 11 Pro. And this replaces the iPhone XS. So this comes in 5.8 inch Pro and a 6.5 inch Pro Max. So it's the iPhone 11 Pro Max. And we need more words next year, right? So $999 for the 5.8 inch, $1099 for the 6.5 inch. So this is where the iPhone used to be. So that was a lot of the rumors that this is the iPhone Pro for $1,000. The iPhone is only $700. iPhone Pro is $1,000. Super Retina XDR, 1200 nits, so which is much brighter than the 500 nits of the previous phones, but it's 15% more energy efficient. We have new colors. We have a midnight green and a new gold. So we'll see those colors in a minute. 4 hours longer battery life than the XS, and 5 hours longer than the XS Max. So again, more efficient chip, more energy efficient, longer battery life. They're now including an 18-watt charger in the box rather than the 12-watt they did, so it'll charge faster. What I haven't seen yet is whether it's a USB-A charger or a USB-C charger cable. So we got to see what the cable is in the box too. George? Pretty sure, yes, because that was part of the 10 also. Again, you can pre-order it 5 a.m. on September 13th, available on the 20th. It has 3 cameras on the back in a triangular shape. So some of the internet memes were that Apple put a fidget spinner on the back of the phone. So it has a 12 megapixel wide angle camera with a f1.8 and optic image stabilization, a 52 millimeter telephoto camera at f2.0, and a 13 millimeter ultra wide camera at f2.4. So again, that 120 field of view. So when it takes a picture, it actually takes 3 pictures with all 3 lenses. That's more the camera software. Apple did update the camera software significantly, and they said there's 30,000 apps in the App Store for dealing with cameras and photos and photo editing, so you can probably find one that does what you want. One of the cool things that they showed is that when you take your picture, since it uses all 3 lenses at the same time, you can, in essence, frame your picture after you take it. So you can decide if you want to zoom in or zoom out after you've taken it because you've got those 3 cameras built in. And they also, in fact, I think that's in the film we'll see. They have, no, that's coming up later. They have really cool editing software now for both stills and video. So all the edits that you could do on stills, you can now do on video. That you shoot, which is pretty cool. And you can switch cameras on the fly to go from the normal camera to the wide angle to the telephoto camera on the fly. With the single lens cameras now, you're doing a digital zoom in, so you're not really adding any quality or getting any closer. It's just cropping off some of the outsides. Because this has a real telephoto lens on it, with image stabilization, you're doing a real zoom in on the Pro camera and can do much better pictures that way. There's software coming later this fall that they're calling Deep Fusion using machine learning. It will shoot 9 images. I think it's 4, 4, and 1. So 4 from the ultra wide, 4 from the wide, and 1 from the normal. Analyzes those 24 million pixels and gives you the best possible image, going through the HDR, going through color balancing, going through auto rotation, stuff like that, all the processing that you used to have to do in Photoshop, it's now going to do in the camera, and will then show you that picture. The one thing he did say is it takes about a second to do this imaging. Yeah, any blurry images. So if the camera is moving just barely, the difference between two pictures will be, this blur minus that blur gives you the real picture. And so one of the blogs was wondering if people are going to want to wait a second for the picture to be taken. One thing that they did say in the camera, and I want to see how they handle this, normally when you hold down the shutter button, it takes a burst photo. And so I've accidentally taken burst photos that I didn't mean to, but then when I remembered it has that feature, when I go to my rocket launches, I'll do the burst photo and catch the rocket launches going up, because you can take pictures really fast. So now in the new camera software, if you hold the shutter button on a still, it will automatically switch to movie without you needing to slide the thing. In fact, I'm hoping you're going to change that whole slide option, where you slide between a still and a square and a movie and a slow-mo, because I'm always trying to zoom in and out and accidentally switch the mode I'm in. But when you want, so I got to figure out, if you want to take a burst of stills, how do you do that versus taking a movie? So we'll have to see when it actually comes out. Well, a movie is a series of frames, but yeah, it's a collection of frames rather than going in. So you can always edit the movie and look at individual frames if you want. They showed off a new software called Filmic, which a lot of professional movie producers use and directors for framing a shot. The one guy said, one of the neat quotes was that they use this software to tell him what lens to use. I've got dozens of lenses available. Which one do I need for this shot, with this composition, with this lighting, with this set, and this Filmic software does that. And it will use all three lenses at once, and also the front camera too. So they said that for documentarians, this is going to be amazing, because you'll be able to shoot both people at the same time. With traditional filming methods, you shoot your subject, and then you go back later and recreate the what do they call it? The interviewer's reaction roll, and so they'll be nodding. So when they edit the film together, the person talks and then the interviewer nods or says something. They often have to shoot that stuff different ways or with multiple cameras to get everything together and then edit it together. With this new Filmic Pro, it's going to happen all simultaneously right in the camera. And so these directors were very excited about it. They've apparently been given pre-release versions to play with. And that software is going to be available later this year. And the current version of Filmic Pro, I think, was $15, which is ridiculous for what you're getting in this software. And again, let's look at the film for the iPhone 11 Pro. And it jumped me out of there. iPhone 11 Pro Max. Here you can see the
Introducing
3-lens array.
iPhone 11 Pro. Every detail has been used as an opportunity to set new standards in design, quality, and engineering, ensuring it will deliver uncompromising performance in any situation. At the core of the iPhone 11 Pro design is a stainless steel structural band and a 3-dimensional glass back, made from the toughest glass in a smartphone.
They
It's
mill
sculpted
the
from
glass.
a single solid sheet,
So that tells you how tough this glass
reinforced
is.
down to the atomic level, and then brought to life in one of 4 textured matte finishes.
And there's the midnight green.
The enclosure is designed to withstand what life can throw at it.
I'm commenting on here so Apple won't take us off the
Rigorous
air.
testing and refining have helped create a durable, dust, and water-resistant iPhone. The Apple-designed A13 Bionic chip is the most ambitious to date. It's the fastest chip ever in a smartphone, yet more efficient than ever. And with new optimized batteries that give you up to 5 extra hours in your day, you get more pro performance in an iPhone for longer than ever. The triple camera system combines cutting-edge technology with the extraordinary ease of iPhone. The redesigned camera interface complements the new hardware with a more immersive and intuitive experience. Telephoto, wide, and new ultra-wide cameras. You can now view 4 times more scene in your photos and videos with the ultra-wide. All-new night mode allows you to capture images never before possible on an iPhone in drastically lower light. The highest quality video in a smartphone is now even better. With extended dynamic range now at 4K at 60 FPS, you can record pro-quality video at twice as many frames per second. Editing tools previously reserved for photos now make editing your videos a pro-level experience. Perfect and then play back your footage on the new Super Retina XDR display that has the highest pixel density of any Apple device. Privacy is built into every iPhone from the ground up. From iOS 13 to Face ID, the most secure facial authentication in a smartphone, which now works from greater angles and is even faster. This new line of iPhone has been pushed to extremes like never before, ensuring that each part is worthy of the name. iPhone 11 Pro.
Well, yeah. So should you have a case or not? It depends. Well, yeah. It depends on how risky you want to be. How often do you drop your phone? Most people will still put it in a case, but Apple has clear cases available now to show off your colors. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, there's no, well, I haven't looked, but probably, because the 10s, 7, from the 7 on, they took the audio jack out, so now you use a lightning to audio adapter if you need to, or Bluetooth headphones. Yeah, with an analog headset, the quality is a lot lower than it would be with pulling a digital signal off the lightning. So we're seeing a lot of the pro audio companies going to digital. We expect the phone to switch to USB-C next year. The iPad Pros have switched to USB-C, so the phone, there was some rumors that it might go this year, but probably next year. So with the iPhone 11 starting at $699, they have kept the XR in the price range starting at $599, and the 8 is still in the price line at $449. So if you have a iPhone 6 or earlier, you can upgrade to an 8, which is a 2-year-old phone, but it's a pretty good 2-year-old phone. Yeah, and these are all with, I forget now. I think it's 32 at the lower end and 64 minimum at the higher end. Yeah. And then, I should have moved this back to about in the watch. We talked about this already. Apple Watch Studio. A lot of people like monthly payments, so you don't have to pay $1,500 for your phone. You can spread it out over monthly payments. And they have a trade-in program, so you can get a couple $100 back off your phone if you're trading in a phone. One of the things that we didn't like, and we've talked about this before, is some of Apple's websites will say, iPhone 10s, starting at $499 asterisk, when you trade in an iPhone 10 for $500. The Fifth Avenue store is reopening September 20th. They just unveiled the new glass cube, bigger sheets of glass. And it looks really cool. It's not going to be the largest Apple store in the world. It'll be open 24/7. And now let's switch over to this, and we'll look at the colors. So this is the midnight green. So it's a darker green than the mint green on the other one. And if we go into pricing. So if you have an old phone to trade in, you can get a discount on it. So let's just max everything out. So we're going to say no. And so starts at $40 a month. But I want the max, so $45 a month. Yeah, I got $45 a month, yeah. And let's do midnight green, because that's the new color. Yeah, minimum of 64 gigs, but let's say 512 just for the heck of it. So now we're at 1440, and then you have to pick your carrier, or you can buy it unlocked and use whatever carrier or not. So $1,450. There are laptops cheaper than that. But the smaller electronics are, the more expensive they can be, because making things small is expensive. So that's why, you know, a desktop is $1,000, an equivalent laptop is $1,500, equivalent notebook is, can be $2,000, because shrinking it smaller costs more money. Yeah, the camera has always been amazing on the higher end. Apple Care is a subscription. There is the Apple, what do they call it? Apple iPhone upgrade program, and the upgrade program included Apple Care as part of the upgrade, so that was built into your monthly price. You didn't have to pay up front for it. They also, we'll get. Yeah, we'll get. Let me look it up. They've also announced that they're going to do Apple Care on the AirPods. So instead of $69 for the a replacement AirPod if you lose one or break one, it'll now be $29 if you bought Apple Care. But I couldn't find how much I think Apple Care was $99. Yeah, that I haven't seen yet. Typically, Apple Care will extend it to 3 years total. What do you remember? What devices it was on? Was it on any device? Yeah, 3 years for. Oh, here's a CNET article about it. Long-term Apple. So right now, Apple keeps parts for 5 years, and when a device is more than 5 years old, it's considered vintage, and then when it's more than 8 years old, it's considered obsolete. So, which part of consumer protection laws, they keep the spare parts around for 5 years. Dun, 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 dun. Monthly plan, 9 to 5. So far, that's just rumors. Yeah. So it looks like 9 to 5 Mac is finding rumors. A lot of times these rumors come from the developer builds. People will dig through the software in the new OS and find screenshots or help menus, and we'll talk about things like that. Alrighty, Shirley, are we ready for refreshments? Let's get refreshed. I think we had some homemade zucchini bread back there. And pumpkin bread, is it? And banana bread. That's right. That's right. The zucchini is still sitting on the counter. If anyone wants a zucchini this big and long, that's huge. And I can take renewals for anyone that is interested. Yeah, if you use your Apple Card at the Apple Store, you get 3% back. If you use the physical card, it's 2%. No. Apple Store, yes, 3% period. If you use
Elsewhere, 2% if you use.
right, yep, and if you use the yeah,
And 4% at grocery stores.
and a couple other companies, I think Uber announced that they were going to do 3% for Uber.
Do you have an Apple Card?
Yeah,
I love mine. Totally amazing.
yeah, I've started using it more than my debit card.
Yeah, I'm doing it.
Well, as long as the cash back is more than the interest you're going to pay.
Right. Yeah. And the one concern I had was statement, but it's easy. You go. I just went because my first month ended the end of last month, so I went in. There's a PDF, and I do Apple AirDrop, and there it is on my computer. We are guessing there's going to be a web-based portal. That would be
Alrighty, let's get started again. Alright, make sure this is pointing at me. So, backup strategies. How many people back up their data? All right. How many people do it automatically? That's the best way. A lot of people over the years have sort of fallen into two camps. People that don't back up and people that haven't lost their data yet. And there's nothing like a good crash and losing data to make you back up your stuff. So in the professional arena, which is a good template for even personal use, is the 3-2-1 backup strategy. That you want to have 3 copies of all your data on 2 different types of media, and one of them should be off-site, at least one of them. So a lot of people have a backup hard drive sitting next to their computer, which is good. If your computer dies, you have your backup drive. If your backup drive dies, you still have your computer. It's unlikely they'll both die at the same point. But if you have a home business or small business or relying on your data to make money, we often say, then you probably want a 3rd copy somewhere. And in the case of fire, flood, theft, natural disaster, your computer and the hard drive sitting next to it are both vulnerable. And that's the thing I wanted to remember to do, and I'll have to remember to do it now. So having a 3rd backup somewhere else is really good. And one of the ways you can do that, one of the easiest ways, is just to have 2 backup hard drives. And you rotate among them and take one off-site. Put one in a garage or safety deposit box or something like that. Take one to work and leave one home. But you have to be careful about that. Every time we mention that on the radio, someone talks about they work in a more security-conscious business, and if you try to leave the business with hardware, they yell at you, thinking you're trying to steal something. So you have to get a permit. I've had that happen at the big companies around here. You have to get a personal property permit when you bring it in, and then another one when it leaves. So that can be a problem based on where you work. But having just two backup drives is handy. The one thing that doesn't do is have 2 different types of media. It used to be you could get a decent tape drive for backing up your stuff. But then we're getting into the hundreds of gigabytes, and now we're slowly getting into multiple terabyte drives. And one of the biggest tape drive I've seen recently is only 1 terabyte, and it's 10 100 gig tapes in a box, and it's like 10 grand. So tape isn't really viable anymore for backup for small users. So that's sort of where we've run into, you use multiple hard drives. So use different hard drive brands. And don't buy a cheap, don't buy a too cheap a brand. So some drives are too cheap, and they're not designed to last that long. And some companies will have a cheap line and a good line. And so for your backup drive, you generally want it to be on the good line. Right, a refurbished drive, why was it refurbished? Someone bought it and returned it. Why did they return it? We have seen over the years, the 2 major hard drive manufacturers are Western Digital and Seagate, and then there's Hitachi Global Storage Solutions, HSD, sort of in there too. Western Digital makes really, really good drives, but something about their external chassis, especially the MyBook series, we've just had so many MyBooks die, and we pull the drive out of the MyBook enclosure, and the drive is fine. So Western Digital makes really good drives that apparently just make crappy chassis. We generally like the LaCie brand, which is owned by Seagate, and so they often have Seagate mechanisms inside of them. And then for the higher performance models, we like the G drives. They are faster, more robust, but a little bit more expensive. And do I have, yeah, I don't have a slide for it, but when you connect the drive to the computer, you have a choice of USB, which is cheaper, or Thunderbolt, which is faster. When you're doing backup storage, it doesn't really matter how fast it is. So USB is fine. If you're using a drive for primary storage, you probably want to go with Thunderbolt, especially if you're doing video or audio, then you need the speed of Thunderbolt. But Thunderbolt can add about sometimes 50% to the cost of the drive. So that makes it a little iffy. We've seen a lot of people though also take their backup drive and start storing files on it, because now laptop drives are so small. They'll put files from their laptop onto the backup drive and then delete them from the laptop, thinking, oh, it's on the backup. It's not a backup anymore. It's one copy, so there's no backup copy. If your backup drive fails, you've lost that data. So we have to explain to our customers, you get one drive for storage if you need more storage on your computer, and then you get a second drive to back them both up, because you want to have at least 2 copies of your data, if not 3. And you can have a local copy that's in your possession, or you can have a cloud copy. And a cloud copy is a nice option to have off-site. So it's not in your premise, so fire, flood, theft, vandalism, you still have that cloud copy. Cloud copies are slow, so it may take a while to do that first cloud copy. For local copies, Time Machine is the software that's built into the Mac. They added that in System 10.5, and the study they talked about then was that less than 10% of people had a backup, and less than 10% of those people had an automatic backup. So a lot of people will say, I've got a flash drive and I copy files onto it. That's my backup. Well, how often do you do that? You have to remember what files you worked on to copy those files. Time Machine just backs up everything on your computer. And so you don't have to worry about it. And it backs up every hour, so you don't lose more than an hour's worth of work. But in that hour, you might not have done very much, so there isn't much to change, so it doesn't take very long to back up. So Time Machine does what's called an incremental backup, so it only backs up your changed files. So your very first backup may take a few hours, because it's backing up everything on your computer. And then after that, it only does your changed files, so it's very fast. You can back up to a USB drive connected to your computer, or if you have multiple computers, which is now very, very common in the household, you could take that USB drive and carry it around to every computer, which is annoying. Or you could buy a USB drive for every computer, which is a little more expensive. Or you can get a network drive. And so the network drive plugs into your network, and all the other computers can see it, and they can back up to it. That's especially handy on a laptop, because you forget to plug things into your laptop. And so a month goes by and you haven't run a backup because you never plugged the backup drive back into the laptop. So we often will tell people that take your power cord and rubber band it to your backup drive cord, and whenever you plug your computer into charge, plug that backup drive in too and let it back up. Apple's Time Capsule made a very, very good backup drive for many years, but they have recently discontinued it, and we're finally out of stock. I think we bought a couple dozen when they announced that they were ceasing production, because it was such an easy-to-use network storage drive, new Wi-Fi, AC, fastest whiz-bang and like that. So now we're in the process of looking for other drives. One of the drives we like, and a lot of our business customers have gotten it, is the G drive is G-Tech. No. The waterproof one. IOSafe. So IOSafe, and we'll bring up some examples and some pictures in a minute. IOSafe makes a hard drive box that's in a waterproof, fireproof, damage-proof enclosure. So it's the size of a shoebox, but fire, flood, theft, fire, flood, it's protected. In fact, one of the demos on their website is they throw it in a fire. And what a lot of people don't realize, that fire safe is one thing, but then when the fire is being put out, it's now flooded. So it has to survive the heat of a fire and being submerged, probably, at least doused with water, if not submerged, while the fire is being put out. And so that's why the IO drive makes a really good IO Safe. That's the brand name. Makes a really good disaster recovery. It's a little more expensive. It's about $400 for a 2 terabyte drive. But if your business runs on your data and you cannot afford to lose your data, then that's a good investment. They also have a network version, so if you have multiple computers, it can be networked. Or with any USB drive, the other thing you can do is share that drive to the network, and then your one computer turns into a backup server. So say you have an iMac sitting in the den, put a big hard drive on that, share it to the network, and then all your laptops can back up over the network to that drive. And that way, when you're not plugged in to the network, you're just on Wi-Fi, your computer will still back up without you needing to remember it. Time Machine will warn you if you haven't had a backup in a while, and you can look at your backup menu and see when your last backup was. So we'll look at that in a minute. And then for cloud backup, Carbonite and Backblaze are two of the big well-known companies. CrashPlan was very popular with personal users because they had a free personal account that would let you back up to your friend's hard drive, which was pretty cool. But they've discontinued that, and now their pay prices are a little higher than the other companies. Carbonite and Backblaze are about $5 per month per computer, which is pretty good, especially, again, if your business relies on your data. So with Time Machine backup or Carbonite Backblaze, backups like that, if you have a disaster, well, let's start. So if you lose a file, you go into Time Machine and go to the folder it's missing from and get your file back. If you have a disaster and lose everything, say your hard drive dies, so you have to replace your hard drive, and then you have to load the OS, and then you have to restore all your data from your backup. So that's time consuming. That could be several hours. In a business environment, that's several hours you're not earning money. So there are different softwares that will give you bootable versus non-bootable. So Time Machine is a non-bootable backup that has to be restored in order to get you back up and running. George?
Going back to the cloud
Mm-hmm.
options, how secure are they?
So the question is, how secure are the cloud options? The big name companies, Carbonite, Backblaze, they encrypt your data before it leaves your computer, so all they get is an encrypted blob. So they can't look at your data. But that is something to be concerned about, especially if you have proprietary data or just don't like the idea of someone else having your data. Make sure it's encrypted before it leaves. We call that PI, pre-internet encryption. George? Right. So that's a good question. So Time Machine backs up everything on your computer. The operating system, the applications, preference files, settings, everything. Right. You can exclude folders from the backup, from Time Machine, but by default it backs up everything. With Carbonite, you tell it to include files and folders. So one of the things some people do is just back up their home folder where their data is. So if there's a catastrophe, you reload the OS, you reload the applications, then you got to go find all your serial numbers. So if you back up the entire computer, then all those serial number and preferences are stored. One of the things we've started seeing, both Adobe and Microsoft are doing, is with their subscription services, the license to use the software is in the subscription. So, yeah, with Adobe there is no serial number anymore. With Microsoft, there's a serial number when you buy it. Then you register that serial number with Microsoft, and then when you install the software, you log into your account and it says, oh yes, you have a license. So you don't have to find your serial numbers anymore. You don't have to keep those serial number boxes anymore, which is handy for people that move computers or have to reinstall frequently. It's annoying when it's a subscription service. So the Adobe Creative Cloud, if you stop paying, it quits working. So a lot of people will use like Photoshop Elements instead of the full Photoshop. With Microsoft, you can still buy what is now being called a perpetual license. So 150 bucks gives you Microsoft Office, one-time payment, that's it. 2019 is the current version. Or their Office 365 subscription is $99 a year, and you can install it on 6 computers, 6 phones, and 6 tablets. And that can be advantageous if you're in a family with several computers, or even yourself. I've got a desktop, a laptop, an iPhone, and an iPad, so I have 4 devices. If I want to run Microsoft Office on my iPad, you have to pay the subscription, because they don't make the standalone version for the iDevices. But that 6 computers, 6 phones, and and it can be a mix of Windows, Android, and iOS. So if you live in a mixed family or live in a family that have a lot of computers, that $100 a year is pretty good. So say you have 4 devices you want to put it on. That's $600 to buy a one-time, or 6 years of subscription. And with the subscription, you get the next version for free. So 2019 is the current version. It'll probably be, 2023, 2024. It's usually every 3 to 4 years they come out with a new version. No, Lifetime includes no new versions. It's lifetime for that version, and that until that version quits running. So even now, Office 2011 mostly works under Mojave, even though it came out in 2011. 2008, we're hearing problems with. 2004 doesn't work at all. But Microsoft Office 2011 will not work. I don't think it'll work in Catalina because we're going to 64-bit only. So 2011 to 2019, you got 8 years out of it. 8 years for $150. That's pretty good. So you may have to buy the 2019 version now. Vicki? Amazon Prime has a backup service? I didn't know that. There's a lot of things Amazon Prime throws in that you don't realize. You get it for the free 2-day shipping, but now there's a music service behind it. There's free TV shows behind it. I didn't know they had a data service, and I don't know if it's encrypted. Maybe whatever you tell the Amazon app to use. Yeah, we can look into that if we have time. So, yeah, movies on Amazon, free TV shows on Amazon Prime. When Jeremy Clarkson pissed off the wrong people at BBC and Top Gear, they got kicked off of Top Gear. They went to Amazon and had a new series, Grand Tour. I think they're in series 4 now. And Amazon is paying them a hell of a lot of money and sending them all over the world. So it's basically Top Gear, the same stuff Top Gear was. Although this year on Top Gear, they got rid of Matt LeBlanc. And they brought in 2 guys from Northern England. And their accents are so bad that BBC America is subtitling them. I don't know if they're subtitled on BBC in England, because you might understand those accents better, but in BBC America, in fact, they had these cool little commercial snippets where they go, "What was that again?" And then they let them say it, and then they subtitle it just with the missing half the words and the inflections, and so you're from the north. So the Northern England has a very low thought of accent. So telling someone they're from the north is a pretty bad insult. I think we had here, Dave. Right. So if you're using a cloud backup and you backup everything, if your hard drive dies and you have to replace the hard drive, well, then you have to install the OS, and then you have to install, say, the Carbonite app, and then you have to wait for everything to download. No, you install that from Apple. Yeah. No, you can do it yourself. Apple includes internet booting since 10.8. Yeah. So that's the advantage of having a local backup is it's a lot faster to do a restore. And the safety of having a cloud backup is that fire, flood, theft, vandalism, whatever. In fact, I remember hearing a story. Francis Ford Coppola's house was broken into, and they stole his computer and all his hard drives sitting next to it. And all his scripts for the last 50 years were on there, and the next scripts he was working on. And he went on the radio and was just pleading for people, bring me back the backup drives. Keep the computer if you want. You might not have a computer, but that data is just so important. So because Time Machine, Carbonite, Cloud Backup, services like that are not bootable, it takes time to do the restore. And if your business depends on it, then you don't want to have to lose that time. So especially in businesses, you may want to have a spare computer, a backup computer, in addition to a backup storage drive. But you can have bootable backups. And two of the most common programs for that are SuperDuper and Carbon Copy Cloner. So that gives you a bootable backup. So say your hard drive dies, you boot your backup drive, and you're back in business in 5 minutes. Now you don't have a backup drive because now this is your primary data, but you're back in business until you can fix the problem. So people that rely on their businesses, you can't be down, even an hour. That is a big deal to have that. So let's go in and look at a couple of these programs. Carbon Copy Cloner. Yeah, so Carbon Copy Cloner, actually let me just bring that up. Carbon Copy Cloner was a very popular software for a long time. And then he went pay only. It used to be shareware. Or, no, donationware even. You donated money if you felt like it. I don't blame him for going commercial and going for charging only, but I had to stop using it because I don't want to pay for software. But it was very common for a long time, and as its name implies, it makes a carbon copy or clone of your data on another hard drive. A lot of people use that when they are upgrading the hard drive. So you have a 500 gig drive in your machine. Well, you clone that to an external drive, and then you put the 2 terabyte drive in your machine and clone it back. That can give you that bootable backup, bootable second copy, and you're back up in business. And that is from Mike Bombich, I think his name was. Shirt Pocket Software makes a program called SuperDuper. SuperDuper is completely free. If you want to schedule it, then you have to pay, and it is it's $25, $27.95. I forget what. Let me see what Carbon Cloner was. $40. It's not that bad. But it's $40. So I've been using SuperDuper now. That still does a duplicate of your data onto another drive. So we do that at work. We have a rotating drive that we put a SuperDuper duplicate on, and then Jackie takes that drive home. I take another drive home. So fire, flood, theft, disaster, we still have all our data on it. There's another program I've been using, Rob Dutoit, maybe, who pronounces French. He has a program called Backup List Plus. This is completely free, but he accepts donations. And this is a more traditional file backup. You pick a folder you want backed up, you pick a drive to back it up onto, and it does it. One thing I like about it versus just copying a folder on the desktop, that if there's an error or a file isn't readable and you're copying in the Finder, it stops. And so we'll often tell a big copy to start at night, come back in the morning, and there's an error 5 minutes after we left. With Backup List Plus, it doesn't stop. It tries and tries and tries and tries and gives up, but then moves on. So it'll keep copying things even if it has trouble. Yeah, if you want to copy just a folder full of things to somewhere else, you can do that in the Finder, just drag and drop copy. We use it a lot for copying data off of drives that are starting to fail, because it will continue on after an error. We wish the Finder would do that, and we hate that error 36, which is an I/O error. It couldn't read the file, so it gave up. The entire copy, not just that one file. But yeah, Backup List Plus, if you want to copy this folder, that folder, this other folder, and do it all in one shot, instead of having to copy this one and wait, copy this one and wait, copy that one and wait, you can build a backup list of that, and it will do them all. Yeah, and we'll go in and do some examples here. So here, this is Time Machine and System Preferences. So this is Apple's built-in program. I have mine set going to my airport time capsule. And the neat thing about Time Machine is it tells you when your oldest backup was, and it tells you when your most current backup was, and when your next backup will be. It's going to skip that because I'm not connected to my time capsule at the moment. And if you are, if you miss too many backups, then you get an error message that you haven't backed up in 7 days. Check to see what's wrong. The nice thing about Time Capsule or Time Machine, it will fill your backup drive, and then when the backup drive is full, it deletes the oldest backups to make room for newer backups. And so if you get a 1 or 2 terabyte backup drive, that could be years. So my 3 terabyte time capsule is going back, 2.5 years? So that's probably okay. If I haven't noticed the file is missing in 2.5 years, I probably don't need it anymore. But what some people like doing is when your backup drive gets full, start a new one, and then put that backup drive in a fire safe. Now that's a key there. A regular safe may only be may not be fire safe at all, just a regular safe. You can get a fire safe that's designed for paper. And everyone remember Fahrenheit 451? That's when paper combusts. Your hard drive will melt at a much lower temperature than that. So if you're planning on putting data in a fire safe, make sure it's a data-rated fire safe, so that it will protect the plastics and the metals of the hard drive in addition to protecting your paper. Plastic melts at 100 degrees, 150 degrees. Some plastics can get pretty soft on a very hot day. You ever leave a CD in your car on a hot summer day, and you come back and it's warped in half? Yeah, bank deposit box is good. They're not fire protected, but they usually have a halon, fire protection system. Although you want to check whether it's halon or water, because if you don't have a water resistant hard drive, then the bank's not a good place for it. Dave? Yes. So the question is there a fire-resistant case you can put your own hard drive in? SentrySafe makes fire-resistant cases that you can put your hard drive in, and they even make what looks like a little safe with a USB cable sticking out the back, which is sort of what IOSafe is as well. Here's one that's gone through a fire, and they're pulling drives out of it. So the IOSafe Solo. Designed for single users, Solo Pro for multiple users. Then they have big RAIDs with a lot of storage in them, so you can back up a business. I like this sitting at the bottom of a fish tank. IOSafe, yep. We used to like SentrySafe because they were local, but they got bought out and moved away. Yeah. Yep. So in your safety deposit box, the only thing the bank will guarantee is it won't get stolen. Well, how's right? A second copy. So that's the key thing. Don't take something off your laptop, put it on the hard drive, and then think it's backed up. It's that one copy. But banks will get stolen anyway. You know, we see in the news all the time. Someone, you know, breaks into a bank and pops open safety deposit boxes. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So SentrySafe has some information on different types of protection. Temperatures, 1800 degrees. That's what does steel melt at? 1500. Aluminium. Explosions, impact. So SentrySafe and IOSafe have a lot. Oops, I was looking at if SentrySafe still has the chassis that you buy. Fire safe. We want a data safe. Is there a search? Here we go. Data safe. A safe for your data. They may not make a data safe anymore. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Digital media. Do you see it somewhere? So steel melts at 1300 Celsius. These are all giving Fahrenheit. 1500 Fahrenheit is 850 Celsius. But so this is an inexpensive one, but it's pretty small. There's some paper in it, so you might fit a hard drive in it. So that's another thing to think about, how much data you're putting in there. So the neat thing with Time Machine is you can also have multiple backup drives. So right now it's pointing to the data drive on my airport time capsule. If I say select disk, I can pick another disk. My 2 terabyte drive I have plugged in here and say use disk. And do I want to replace it or use them both? So when you get rid of an old drive and you're going to add a new drive, you could replace, or I can say use both. And now it will use both drives. So this drive is waiting to back up. This drive will back up later when I'm reconnected. And you can have as many backup drives connected to Time Machine as you want. And it will just keep backing them all up one by one by one. So that lets you rotate backups if you want. Have 2 or 3 backup drives that you rotate off-site is a nice way to do that. I am going to go and remove that drive because we're going to move it on to something else. So stop using the loose terabyte. So then one of the other options, I thought I had the programs already open. So we'll look at carbon, that's in utilities. Carbon copy cloner. Yes. Let's see how far I can do without purchasing it. So I'm going to say trial. So 30 days. Oh, fully featured for 30 days. That's nice. Except you have to wait for the trial to count down so you can use the screen. So one nice thing about this is going to pick my source drive. So I'm going to take my internal drive and pick my destination drive. And I'm going to say, let's see, 2 terabyte. And when do you want to schedule it? So you can schedule a backup. One of the dangers is leaving your drive connected all the time. If there's a power surge or nearby lightning strike or a brownout, something that could affect the data on your computer could also affect the data on the hard drive that's plugged into the computer. And in the Windows world, malware, encrypting ransomware is a very big problem now, that your data is encrypted and any plugged in volume, the data is encrypted. So it doesn't matter that you have a backup drive because it's connected to your computer, it gets encrypted and held ransom too. Fortunately, there's no active ransomware for the Mac, but if you're sharing your data with a Windows user and they get infected, it can infect the data on your Mac. If you were sharing a drive to a Mac user. We had one of our customers got hit by that. One of the Windows users on their network had the server mounted, the company server, and it encrypted all the data on the company server because it was mounted from a PC that got a ransomware infection from Windows. So Carbon Copy Cloner has a pretty easy task. What you want to do, copy them all or copy some of them. I haven't played with this in too long. What is safety net? Oh, data that's okay. The SuperDuper calls that something else. So you can use disk utility with the OS to make a clone or an image, it calls it. It copies all your data onto the drive. And then in a week, you want to make a new clone. It erases the drive, copies all your data onto the drive. If you have a lot of data, that can take a long time, hours and hours. So Carbon Copy Cloner has a feature called Safety Net, where only the modified files will be copied, and the deleted files will be deleted. It doesn't have to copy everything, so that makes it a lot faster. Although technically then it's not a clone anymore. SuperDuper, as we'll see in a moment, calls that a smart copy. So yes, the one I used last time isn't there. So I'm going to copy from my CIDER book to my image, the C drive, and copy. So it's the same thing here. We're going to back up all files, or one of the options is you have you erase it and then copy it, or you have a smart copy, which is the same thing Carbon Copy Cloner calls their safety net. It only copies the changed files. Now both Carbon Copy Cloner and SuperDuper and other cloning type programs assume you're going to dedicate that one drive to that one computer. Because in essence, it erases that drive and copies all the data from that computer. So if you want to do multiple computers, you generally want to have multiple hard drives. Yeah, it's got to be the whole drive, not the volume. And then Backup List Plus, yes. I just downloaded new versions of them all, so it's warning me that I did that. Backup List Plus, I add files, so I can either go into the file picker and I can add, let's go up here and let's say add my documents. Okay. Or I can drag an icon in from the desktop. So this is my source of all my data. And then I can pick a target. And I will go pick my external drive. And what Backup List Plus does is it makes a folder on the disk for each backup. So it doesn't have to dedicate one drive to one computer. And in fact, Time Machine does the same thing. If I look at my 2-machine drive, I have your backups folder. So I'm actually doing something that isn't recommended. I have data on this drive too, but it's data that I don't care about if I lose it. So the backups.backupdb is the Time Machine backup, and each computer you back up is listed by name. So this is my my Mac Mini, and then each backup that is done, and it's thinking because there's a lot of them, has a separate date. And so that's what allows you to differentiate between multiple computers on one hard drive and then multiple backups inside that hard drive. So I can go back and look at, so here, August 20th, 2017, here's my hard drive. I can go in and find something that I think I lost on the hard drive. The biggest thing with Time Machine is you have to know what folder you lost it from. And a lot of people don't realize on your computer you have a users folder, and in your users folder you have a folder for each user on the computer. If you're the only user, there's probably only your folder, but there's also a shared folder for other users to access, but even if you're the only user. So I go into my Steve folder, and then it's going to show my desktop and my documents and my movies and my pictures. So these are all the folders that things are in. So if I lost something from my desktop, I would open my desktop folder. So the desktop is a folder on your hard drive, and the computer takes that and shows it on the desktop itself, but it is a folder on the drive. So then here's a file. I could copy that back to my main drive. Now the actual Time Machine interface is a little different, and I can't see it because I have too many icons. So I'm going to go and bring it up. I'm not sure how this will work because this isn't my Time Machine drive for this computer. Normally there's a Time Machine icon in the menu bar, and what the Time Machine drive does is it shows you this going back in time. So you can see the dates to let you go back in time for each backup you've done. And if you hit the back button, it looks for the first change in your data. So that if you've lost something, it's probably a change. So then it will scroll back until it finds the thing that's different. Or you can also use the search and search for a file you may have lost. So restoring a file with Time Machine, you usually don't do that often, so a lot of people will have trouble remembering how to do it. But you go to the folder you're missing the file from, and then click on the Time Machine icon to take you to that folder in your backups so it can find the thing you're missing. Let me see, do I have a program with fewer menus to get to my, there's my Time Machine menu. So the Time Machine menu in your menu bar, right now, it's trying to back up, so it's looking for my backup disk. That's not connected at the moment, so that's gonna stop. I'm gonna say skip backup. And so now this tells me where my last backup was done and the date it was done on. So that always gives you a visual reminder of when your backup was done. Benchmark, thank you. And if the backup hasn't been done in a while, you get an exclamation point in the menu bar to warn you that something is wrong. And this is where I would say enter Time Machine to go into the Time Machine interface to restore a single file or multiple files or folders. When you want to restore the entire hard drive, you go to the Mac recovery volume by holding down Command R while you boot. Recovery volume. And I want to see a picture of it so I can show you. There it is. And you may have seen this before, the macOS Utilities icon. If your main volume won't boot, it will take you to the Utilities, where you can restore from your backup, you can reinstall the OS, you can open Safari and try to look for help online, or you can open Disk Utility and try to repair your disk if something is wrong with your disk. So when you have to replace your disk after a catastrophic failure, you boot with Command R and it boots over the internet. It's amazing that it boots your computer from a server on Apple's internet somewhere. And then you can say reinstall the OS, and it will reinstall the OS. There's actually a couple different keys you can do, whether you want the OS your computer came with or the latest OS it can run. It's a neat way to be able to recover. So what they used to do is include disks with the computer that everyone lost. So 3, 4, 5 years later, you need a new hard drive. Where's your original disks? Well, then we can't put your software on because we don't have the disks. So around 10.7 or so, they started doing internet recovery so that you can boot over the internet and not need physical disks anymore. Windows uses, that's been common in Windows for a long time, to have a separate volume for recovery. But if your hard drive crashes, Windows doesn't have internet recovery. You have to have something else to install from. George? So the question is, what OS does it install? You have a choice. Command R will give you the latest OS that was already on your computer. Command Option R will give you the most current OS your computer can run. So say you had 10.13 on your computer, but it will run 10.14. That's what Command Option R would do. Yeah, yep. And then Shift Option Command R will put the original OS on it. So, you know, your 2011 iMac that came with 10.9 or 10.8, Shift Option Command R would boot 10.8 and put that one on. Right. So they started this in 10.7, so if your computer originally came with 10.6, then Internet Boot probably won't work and you need your 10.6 disks, which was, what, 7, 8 years ago now? Yeah. We are still recommending on older computers, if your computer's more than 4 or 5 years old, don't go to Mojave. It seems to be a lot slower. Even if you have 8 gigs of RAM, maybe 16 gigs of RAM and an SSD, you're probably fine. But 8 gigs of RAM and a spinning drive, it will probably be slower than what you're used to. And we haven't seen enough about Catalina yet. That was the other thing Apple didn't announce is Catalina. So there's probably, Catalina is probably coming on the new Mac Pro, which will probably get announced in October, November. So they got to have at least one more event. Vicki, did I see you started a question? Maybe. This will give you the latest OS your computer can run. But you can get that from the App Store anyway. The trick is finding older versions in the App Store. And so far, Apple, they're hidden, but you can still get older OSs in the App Store. One of the things we do for people, when we don't want to put 10.14 on, we'll do Mac 10.13 install. Sometimes I'll do 10.13, sometimes I'll do High Sierra. There we go, how to upgrade to High Sierra. And what they do is they say, you should really go to Mojave. But I don't want Mojave for some reason. So Mojave is the current OS. There is a hidden link that will let me go back to High Sierra, and it opens the App Store, and now I can get to High Sierra. And you can do Sierra and El Cap, and I think it goes back to Mavericks. One of the things, I have this Mac Tracker program, mactracker.ca, which is really nice for telling you what versions of the OS your computer will run. So let's say I've got, let's go to something old, an iMac mid-2007. If I go into software, the max OS it will run is 10.11. There's also a really nice iPad version of Mac Tracker. So this will tell you the maximum OS your computer can run. So it originally came with 10.4, and it can run up to 10.11. So that's a long ways in computer terms, being able to run 7 newer versions of the OS. And there are certain jumps. Yeah, so in 2006, the maximum was 10.7. So the 2007 machines can go to 10.11. And if we go forward in time, eventually, here we go. In 2009, they went to 10.13 as the maximum. But again, if you've only got 2 gigs of RAM or 4 gigs of RAM, you probably don't want to run the newer OS. But oftentimes, just Googling what's the maximum OS for iMac 2007, it will tell you. So that lets you recover from a catastrophic failure by going into Internet Recovery to reinstall the OS on your hard drive. One of the things that we've seen the Apple tech support do that's a little annoying is say there's something wrong with your hard drive, it won't boot, and it automatically dumps you into recovery. Because the Mac will look for a bootable drive, and if it can't find one, you'll get a flashing question mark, which a lot of us have seen over the years. But the recovery partition is on your hard drive. And so if it can't boot the main partition, it may automatically boot the recovery partition, and you come up into this. And the reinstall Mac OS will reinstall over the top of the OS that's already there, which can often fix problems. Disk Utility will erase the hard drive, and Disk Utility will fix problems on your hard drive, and it will erase your hard drive. It's a little disconcerting that it's got both halves. But if you click erase, there's like 3 times. Are you sure you want to erase? Are you sure you want to erase before it really erases? And we've had a lot of people being told by tech support, erase your hard drive and reinstall, without asking the customer if they have a backup. And then suddenly they come into us, Apple told me to erase my hard drive, I need all my files back. Well, one, you erased your hard drive. It's going to be really hard to get your files back. But the way hard drives work, it doesn't actually erase the data, so anything that's not overwritten can probably get back, but you're going to lose all the file names, and you're going to lose all the, well, that comes next. You're going to lose all the file names, you're going to lose all the folder names, because the directory keeps track of all that stuff, and when you erase the drive, the directory's gone. If you Right, then if you have a time machine backup, yeah. So that's why when I started all this, one good crash makes you back up forever.
I think I did that with the top ones. We had like 3,000 photos, and they were like picture one, picture two, picture
Yep.
three. And I said you have to open up every file.
And a lot of those are like the icons from inside an application. So 90% of them are probably crap. But you have to look at every single one of them until you find the ones you need. So then if your hard drive actually has a mechanical failure or a head crash and there's a physical failure, companies like Drive Savers, they have clean rooms and spacesuits and electron microscopes, and they literally look at which way the bit is going. Now, is it plus minus or is it north-south or south-north? $1,000 minimum.
You open the box.
Yeah.
Just open the box. You're not going to touch it. Just
Although we have a dealer referral number that they will they waive the diagnostic fee and they'll do free diagnostics.
yeah. I think they did something once where they recovered like something that was on the Titanic or something.
Yeah.
One of these.
An Amazon a riverboat sunk with a laptop on board, and somebody went back months later with a scuba kit and got it back up, and that was their museum of disasters. So one of the things they do is the way a hard drive works. You may have seen some of the pictures go by. You have a circular platter. It's rust on plastic. So little iron filings, rust, that go south-north or north-south, embedded in a layer of plastic, where the magnetic field is imposed is not the right word, induced on the little bit of rust. So a 1 terabyte hard drive has 1 trillion bytes of data, and there's 8 bits in a byte, plus start bits and stop bits. So 10 trillion bits you have to look at, which is why it starts at $1,000. But sometimes it's the controller card. So they can pull the controller card off, put a different controller card on, and get your data. So that might only be a $1,000 repair. If they have to look in at those 10 trillion bits one at a time, that might be the $2,000 or $3,000 repair. So $100 for a multi-terabyte hard drive to have a backup, or several $1,000s to have forensic data recovery get your data back. Your choice. Pay me now or pay me later, as the one commercial used to say.
That has to be some good stuff you need.
Yeah. So there's what a hard drive looks like on the inside. Platters, the read head. RAID. Oh, we had one customer. So a RAID is 2 drives that look like one. If it's mirror or striped. Well, it's one. You get one volume out of it. If it's mirrored, when one drive fails, the mirror on the other drive has all your data. But that's a little slower because it has to write the data twice. So a lot of people that use RAID for speed. They'll do RAID striping, so it writes half the data over here and half the data over there, and so it can do it twice as fast. So that means when one drive dies, you lose all the data on both drives. So we had a customer brought in a Mac Pro with a 4-drive RAID 5. I think that was a $5,000 estimate.
But if either drive goes,
Right. Yeah. Well, RAID 5 is good. Right. So with 3 drives, if one drive fails, the other drives are okay. One drive failed, and he didn't do anything about it. So then what it did was turned off RAID 5 and went down to striping with no parity. And then a second drive failed, and everything's gone. And that's where a lot of money comes in. George.
Nick earlier mentioned Drobo, and Drobo has sort of a unique solution to that kind of thing. What are my backup settings?
Yeah, so RAID is a redundant array of inexpensive disks is one of the acronyms. Storage, yeah. So let's say the 5C. So the neat thing about the Drobo, where's the picture? Show me a picture, damn it. How about just go there? maybe the screen's too big. So normally with a RAID, you would have, so this has got 5 drives in it, up to 5 drives. You would have to put 5 identical drives in your RAID. Normally in a RAID. So you put 5, say 4 terabyte drives in it, 1 for parity, and then so you have 4 for data, so that's 20 terabytes. If any one drive fails, all your data's okay in RAID 5. In RAID 6, you can have 2 drives for parity, and then you get 3 data. What Drobo does is they allow you to mix drive sizes. So normally, say you put a 1 terabyte drive and a 2 terabyte drive in a RAID box, it only looks at the 1 terabyte and says, oh, I can only do 1 terabyte on that too. With Drobo, it will add all the drives up of different sizes and give you all the data minus the largest drive, because if the largest drive fails, you still want that parity. So what Drobo is kind of neat for, is especially the 5-bay chassis. A lot of people have a lot of drives lying around. You've upgraded the drives in your computer, and so you just stick that in. And when the light turns green, that means everything's fine. When the light is I think it's yellow, that means one of your drives is full. And so you pull out the smallest drive, put in the next bigger drive, and suddenly you have more space. When it goes red, there's a problem, and then you get it fixed. But Drobo is nice because you don't have to put in identical sized drives. You can use whatever drives you have lying around.
But Steve, if one goes red, you just pull it out and put in a.
Right, you pull it out, pull the next one in.
And you just continue to go on.
Yeah. Keeps working, yep. The disadvantage of Drobo is it's expensive. So it's $350 for 0 drives. So that's just the chassis, which is great if you have a lot of drives you want to put in it yourself. Yep. With the power cord, so we've got a bunch of Drobos with no power cords. So if you want a 40 terabyte drive, that's $2,000. So if you have a lot of data, having a RAID with multiple drives in it is usually less expensive than having one really giant drive. I think 10 terabytes is the single largest drive available now, and that's still pretty expensive. But Drobo comes with larger bays. There's an 8-bay one. They used to have a 14. Apple used to have a 14-bay RAID box. And so at the time, I think 4 terabytes was as big as they had. So you could put 14 4 terabyte drives in it.
Steve, another advantage of Drobo is you can put in low capacity drives if you don't have a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
as your system grows, you can just replace them.
Right. So say you have a bunch of 500 gig drives, you put 4 of them in there, that gives you a terabyte and a half. And as your needs grow, you can just pull the smaller drives out and put bigger drives in. Alrighty, we're about running out of time. Any last questions? All right.
Yeah, Steve, I think you really covered the whole genre. That's what I was kind of.
So how many people are not backing up? Let me ask that, because most people were. Would you cry if you lost all your data? Would your husband cry if you lost all your data? We get so many customers that come in, and it's the pictures of my kids, my grandkids, my dying parent that is now dead, and get your data back. Yeah. Yep. All right, so this coming Saturday, we are doing our Saturday SIG at 2 o'clock at Bob Hoy's house. Is Bob still here, or did he leave? Bob's still here, yep. 2 o'clock for green apples for basic questions. 3 o'clock, I get there for the Q&A. And if you have urgent questions in the meantime, we have the Soundbites radio show, starting our 31st year now on the air, Saturdays from 12 to 2 on award-winning, member-supported Jazz 90.1. That call in and get your questions answered as well. Next month. We have next month. Yes, we are having Moondog Labs is going to come in and show off their anamorphic lenses. So these are lenses that you attach onto your phone that do cool things. Some people might be familiar with the Oloclip that gives you fisheye or a wide angle or macro lens. So Moondog Labs does these really cool lenses for using your iPhone as a cinema camera, which is really cool. It shoots 4K video at 60 frames per second. Yeah. So you may not, yeah. In fact, the smartphone cameras have pretty much killed the point-and-shoot camera market. Well, you know, the phone in your camera is probably better than any point-and-shoot you might want to get. Although I've got a 30x optical zoom Kodak camera. Yeah, it's getting slow. I need a better one. So now I'm looking at a 60x zoom camera for less than I paid for this one. Yeah. 60. Well, then you need a tripod because you can't hold it steady at 60x. I sometimes have trouble holding it at 30x. Yeah. Shirley, do you have a? Genealogy in December. We have someone coming in. Yep. Great. Oh, and Adam Engst is November. Yep. We forgot to mention earlier, Amazon donations at smile.amazon.com and the Apple Cider referral link. This is their back to school. I think I can go away from that now. So on the Cider main website, we have our shopping discounts. If you use that Amazon link, we get a donation as a nonprofit and a referrer that doesn't cost you anything. We get money back. Let me see if it said no. I don't buy anything from the Cider account, so it doesn't tell me. But when I log into my own account, it tells me how much money I've donated to Cider. As we're coming into the holiday season, yeah, you might want to donate some money to Cider. All right, thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next time.